now, did you guys actually advise Apple on the acquisition of Next?
Yes.
So you were opposite Steve Jobs on him coming back into his company?
Yes. Although, candidly, the deal got done really between Gil Amelio, who had replaced Mike Spindler, right, and Steve. So what happened is Spindler was replaced. In fact, Spindler was replaced during the negotiations with Sun.
Got it.
And there's a crazy story about this, which I can tell you one day. But anyway, so Emilio replaces him, and the deal with Sun craters, and Apple realizes they don't have an operating system. So they start a conversation with a company called B, which was started by Jean-Louis Gasset, who was an ex-Apple executive, which had a great operating system, very similar to what the Mac operating system looks like today. And he and his investors, Dave Marquardt was the main investor in the company, wanted about 25% of Apple to do this deal. And it was too much. He wanted 25% of the company. So Steve Jobs got wind of what was going on. He was running Next. And he said, I have a next-gen operating system. So Emilio bought it. And Steve didn't do this deal. I don't think he did this deal because his ulterior motive was, I'm going to go take over Apple. Not at all. He wanted to find a solution for Next. And that was, okay, perfect solution. And then Gil asked him to come back as a consultant and help him and everything. And eventually he kicked out Gil and took over. But so yes, we did advise Apple when they bought Next. And when you think about it with hindsight, you say, wow, this should have been the easiest fairness opinion you ever gave, right? Because obviously Steve hadn't come back to Apple. Apple wouldn't be what it is today either.
Totally. But there was also the Pixar
yes.
acquisition, right? So was that advising,
yes.
Were you advising Pixar?
Jobs. Yeah.
You were,
was having,
what was he like as a client?
You know, look, everything that's been written about him is true, right? In particular, you know, his intellect, his vision, I mean, his intensity. He was a very unique person. I don't know there are many people like him or any people like him. And he was a tough guy. So what's interesting is that, you know, I'll give you some funny stories. I mean, my friend Larry Sonsini actually introduced me to him at the time because
founder
he was looking
Wilson Sonsini law firm.
Law firm, yeah. And Larry's a very prominent lawyer in Silicon Valley and did a lot of M&A, and he and I worked together and across from each other a lot. But he introduced me to Steve because Steve was looking for an advisor in the context of potential acquisition of Pixar by Disney. So I went to meet Steve and I got interviewed by him. And I guess it worked out because he hired me. But then he asked me what I expected to be paid. And I told him what our fee would be. And he looked at me and said, well, I can get whatever, 100 engineers for that much money. So no, that doesn't work. So I'll confess that I compromised for a meaningfully lower fee because I wanted to work on this deal. This was a, you know, industry defining transaction. Plus, you know, it was Steve. So, but you know, I'll give you an example. So incredibly insightful, of course. But you know, it was an interesting situation because this is a company. Pixar was a company that probably made 5 movies at the time, all successful. Some very successful, some quite successful, and it was acquired for like $8.5 billion. So it was priced beyond perfection, right? It was priced on the assumption that they can continue to churn great, successful movies consistently and without any hiccups along the way. And to his credit, Steve understood that this company was priced to perfection, which is why the deal got done and not a very big premium to market. It was actually amazing they could get comfortable with the value in the first place. And there was a discussion around the cadence of releasing new movies. You know, they released movies about once a year. And you could justify bigger numbers if you released more than 1 movie a year, right? If you did 2 movies, then there was more money in the bank. And Steve was adamant that, no, we're not going to compromise quality just to make more money. And you could argue maybe he would have gotten more. I don't think he would have, but maybe would have gotten more by saying, yeah, sure, we can do 2 movies a year. No, he was absolutely, dead set that that's just the way to do it. And quality is very important. And what's really interesting about this deal is that when you think about it, Disney, which heart and soul is animation, had lost that. And they had to actually buy Pixar to get that DNA back, which is why they did the Pixar deal in reality. But it was actually a very successful deal for Disney.
Was that the only logical home that Steve wanted it to go to?
Yeah, he wasn't even interested in having any other discussion. We, in fact, didn't talk to anyone else. And he was a controlling shareholder, by the way. We didn't talk to anyone else. And look, Disney was distributing Pixar movies anyway, so it was the natural home for Disney. And before, there was the relationship between Jobs and Eisner got strained for a while. And then when Iger took over, that relationship got repaired. and they became very close and had a very constructive relationship. And that was one of the catalysts for this deal coming together. But that was the only natural home for it.